Whiskey17 here again with another episode in the video game series. Today I thought we would take a look at one of the systems in the collection that's kind of overlooked. You don't hear a lot about it. I picked this up a while back and come to find out it had an issue, but we got it figured out. So I thought today we would take a look at the Coleco Gemini. Okay, so today I thought we'd take a look at a couple of issues and fixes for the Coleco Gemini that were apparently fairly common as the system's got some age on them. So before we get into the teardown and the repair, I thought we'd go through just a quick little history of the Gemini. In 1982, ColecoVision was sued by Atari because they had come out with the expansion port module 1 for the ColecoVision, which allowed the Coleco to play Atari 2600 games. Atari sued them, but they ultimately lost the case because Coleco had convinced the jury that they had used off-the-shelf parts and not Atari parts to make this. And then the Coleco Gemini came into being because after the lawsuit, even though Coleco had won, Coleco was like, well, you know what? Let's just make our own Atari 2600 and sell. So they did. They produced it. It did not have that big a following here in the States, but it was cheaper than the Atari 2600s at the time. As you can see, you know, it had the different smaller design than the Atari 2600 had. For some reason, it was really popular in Canada because you will see some of them that you will actually have French wording on here instead of the English like this one. It's in French. Another interesting point to that was the Atari 2600 used a joystick controller, and then you had a separate paddle controller, to where the Coleco Gemini, they incorporated both into one. You had the 8-way joystick up top, and then there's a 270-degree paddle wheel at the bottom, so you could still play games, Atari Circus, Knight Rider, all of the, all the stuff that you could play. But now you didn't have to plug a separate controller in. It did it both. It's not that great of a design, honestly, but all in all, they did what they did. So I'll tell you what, all right, let's get into the actual deconstruction now so that we can look at the repairs. First thing to do is to flip the Gemini over, and there are 6 screw holes in the bottom of the case. The 3 across the bottom are your shorter screws. The 3 along the top up here are your longer screws. All right, now once you have those out, you can simply just lift the lid. All right. Your RF shielding is just sitting on the board. It's not screwed in. So you can simply take it off. All right, now here's your motherboard. Your motherboard is going to be held in by 6 screws. Here, 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 here. All right, so once those are out, I've already taken those out just to speed things up. Here. It's kind of hard to do one-handed. But there's your motherboard. You've got another RF shield in the bottom of the Gemini, but it can just stay in place. All right. The common issue with the motherboards for the Gemini are that your contact points for your control ports here, the solder points here, and on the power right here. Now I've already fixed this one because it was loose. You'll notice because like you were able to move it, it would wiggle. Same thing with the controller ports on the front. A lot of times what would happen is the solder would loosen up and these would start to wiggle, and you'd have to force the cord down for it to make contact to work. Unfortunately, I'd already repaired this one before I thought that I would do the video on it. But again, there it was right there. These solder points, all I had to do was just retouch them up, and then it made good contact, and it powers on like it's supposed to, and plays just fine. My other piece of advice is, while you've got the Gemini apart, take some mild soapy water and just give it a good cleaning while you've got it apart. These things build up a ton of dust, as everybody knows. Any game system will when it comes with setting. So just take and wash it. You can use a real soft toothbrush if you want to get into nooks and crannies and all that. Dry it off, then let it air dry for a while before you put everything back together. If you want to, before you put everything back together, what I like to do is I just take and we'll use some Armor on it to wipe it down, and that puts that kind of sheen back on it, makes it look newer. All right, that just about brings us to the end of this episode of the video game series. The Coleco Geminis, they're not a rare system, but they are uncommon. You don't really find these out in the wild too often. But if you do, I would recommend pick it up. Like I said, there's not too terribly many of them just floating around out there. Like I said, it's uncommon, but it's not rare. All right, well, that's going to wrap this episode up. Again, I'm Whiskey17. If you found anything about this video useful or helpful, click the button up here at the top, and I will see you guys next time.